because nobody believed it, didn't want to believe it, and it wasn't of any use. Well, it's the same thing with the religions. It can be used for positive or for negative, but ultimately it's the responsibility of the people who buy into that belief system to use it in a good manner, or a negative manner. So it's like, what was it, Flip Wilson when we were kids? The devil made me do it. I mean, how often have we heard that? Where in fact, he made the choice to do it, so.
Faust.
Yeah, Faust.
So, I know you've told me that in the last 5 years you've had limited contact, although you've had some in the last year with the Andromedans. But according to what you've come to understand in previous years about the moon, what's been occurring there in recent times, say the last 50 years, you've stated that the NSA has been operating bases on the moon since the spring of 1958. Now, a skeptic would say, how is that possible to keep such a secret hidden from the public for so long? And how did you get the information that the NSA has had bases on the moon since the 50s?
Okay. Well, it wasn't their base, but they were there sharing the base. Let's correct that. They were taken up there by the Greys. That's how they got there. There was an exchange of technology and personnel. We know this, but this goes back to 54, and there were even attempts at contacts even earlier than that. So there was in 54 the beginning of sharing of technology. Now that project, from what I understand, it's amazing. The first group and series of groups that went were known as the Black Monks. I don't know if it was Project Black Monk or what. But this has been going on for some time, and everybody thinks the government can't keep a secret. Well, they absolutely can keep secrets. I think in the beginning their intentions were good. I think they honestly wanted to get their hands on this technology. I think they thought that they were clever enough that they could take this technology, use it here, and at some point end the relationship. I think that they were arrogant enough at the time, I'm talking about our people that began this whole program, that they thought that they could trick the Greys out of this technology. We would have it, and at some point we could push them away, and we would have it, and we would be free, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Either that, or they were incredibly naive and just couldn't help themselves. I don't necessarily have that answer. But it has not gone the way they've expected it. And many of them inside the program know that they're in trouble, that this is an issue that they don't know how to resolve. And I can tell you that I know that there has been efforts to reach out to other races to help with this issue. The problem is, though, and what keeps coming back when there has been, how do I put this? When there has been some face-to-face with benevolent races, what comes back is that these benevolent races will push back to the governments or to this group. Well, it was our government that did it at first. They say, look, you signed a treaty. You agreed to all of this knowingly. It's your responsibility. And apparently we were warned, not to go with these guys. So it's kind of a dilemma, actually. And but at this point, the benevolence will intervene. I absolutely believe they will intervene for the sake of humanity and not the sake of world governments. They're going to do, I believe, they're going to do whatever they can to protect the people. not the governments.
Was the 1969 moon landing a fake, or was it real?
I don't believe it was a fake at all, no.
Why haven't we gone back since 1972 or 73 to the moon?
Well, I don't think it was because of lack of interest. I think it had to do with the fact that we were told not to go back.
Who told us that?
I don't even want to get into that. I don't want to get into that. Next question.
All right. Okay. When Mornay shared with you their understanding of the relationship with the isness, which is like what some of us might call the one or God, they call it the isness, back in 1995, what was your reaction to it?
Awe. My reaction to it was awe because of the simplicity and how clean it was. And I immediately saw some parallels between what the Native American and other indigenous people had practiced as far as being a part of nature and appreciating nature and the grandeur of nature and watching nature and understanding the power and the presence of it, not only to heal but to create wisdom and to educate about who we are in our physicality. You know, for example, what most people don't understand is many of our herbal treatments that have been used for thousands and thousands of years, the indigenous people learned from the animals by watching the animals, knowing what plants to eat when they weren't feeling well. You know, I mean, we take it for granted because we think we have, you know, modern medicine, but most of modern medicine is recreating extracts found in the plant world. That's all it is. Except, you know, their stuff is really tweaked, you know, and it creates other problems for the body because it isn't real.
Okay, Alex, critics of contactees often make the argument that the whole ET UFO phenomena is simply a ruse by attention seekers to create a cult following and pseudo-religion around themselves. Now, how would you answer these types of critics?
Well, you know, it's interesting. The contactees that I've met, none of them really want the attention. In fact, it's more disruptive and harmful to their lives than anything possibly could be. You know, with the exception of the Meyer case, where they create Fiju and you know, it's become radical that Billy's it and he's the one and it's only him and it's only about him. You know, other than that, I'm not aware of well, there is that guy in France, right? The Raelians or something like that, whatever they're called. You know, there is that guy. I think that for the love of the planet, most contactees who have come forward share the information because they believe it will help. It'll help give us some insight into what our issues are and our own self-identity, to realize we're not alone. That, you know, maybe there is a way for us to get some answers so we don't destroy our planet, destroy our ecology. You know, that there are some mentors out there, races who could mentor us through this transition that we're going through. As far as creating religions and cults, well, humanity has always done that. You know, that's why you've got the religions. I mean, you know, the Romans knew what they were doing when they were creating the religions of the East and the West, and creating Christianity. They knew what they were doing. I just, you know, the critics could find anything to bitch about anything. You know, they can, you know, they sit behind their computers and they say they can, you know, say whatever they want to say. But what would they do in the same position if they were being contacted? Would they shit their pants, or would they stand up and what would they do with the information? I'm sorry, you need to go away. I don't want any of this information because I'm afraid I'll create a cult. I mean, what is that? You know, what would they do? What would they do in this situation? You know, it's so easy to criticize